Hello, all the nerds out there. How are you? I hope you all are doing with your nerdy stuff like usual, right? And guess today what? Today we are going to explore about this particular topic. First of all, I would like to tell you a couple of things like that we have all tests based on this particular topic that you can find in our app. And to get the app, it's easy. You just go to your Play Store and download it from there. Just you have to search Nerd School and our app will be there, right? So this subaltern is, I'm just gonna introduce you with simple thing, right? So in this lecture, we'll start with the introduction, then we move to the Gayatri Spivak's Can the Subaltern Speak? Then we'll have we'll go to Ranajit Guha and we'll also continue with Dipesh Chakrabarty and then we'll conclude our lecture, right? So I hope you all are pretty excited now. So let's not waste any time. Imagine this, you know, if you're imagining a history being looked at from a totally different angle, not just through the eyes of the powerful and elite, but from the perspective of the everyday people like us, right? The ones who might not always have a big voice at that time. So, what's the deal with the subaltern studies? Well, if you ask me, I'll just say it's like a bunch of scholars, we'll call them Subaltern Studies Group, decided to flip the script of traditional history. You know, the kind that usually focus on the big shot like rulers, elite, and these high societies, right? But here, these scholars were like, hold up. Let's hear what the common folks have to say. You elite people have different perspective, but what about the people who are, who are common people? What do they have to say? So that is our subaltern studies. So let's move to the introduction first. They were all like about challenging the narratives that have been handed down to us. You might wonder, how did they do that? Well, they looked into the stories and experiences of those often ignored or marginalized, or we can say in simpler word, subalterns. And it's not about superheroes or secret identity. It's about people who are often pushed to the fringes of society because of things like class, race, gender, and more. Right? And now one of the big names in this game is our Gayatri Spivak. She is this awesome Indian American scholar who wasn't afraid to shake things up. She is known for asking a really intriguing questions like, can the subaltern speak? It's like she's saying, hey, are these voices being heard ever? Or they are just being drowned out by the louder ones like elite society? And trust me, her ideas are mind bending. Right. So we have another key figure that we are going to discuss is Ranjit Guha. He played a major role in shaping this whole subaltern studies movement. And he believed that history shouldn't be just about the rulers and elite. It should also be about those who were often overlooked, like the peasants and workers. He challenged the traditional stories we have been told and pushed for a deeper, more inclusive perspective. And guess what? The subaltern studies thing isn't just about India. It's spread its wing to influence how we look at history in places like Africa and Latin America too. It's like a ripple of effect, changing perspectives, all starting with these scholars who dare to ask, what if we looked at history from a different angle? So, in this journey, what we are going to do, we're going to explore how subaltern studies turned history on its head and embrace the story of the marginalized and challenge the old ways of thinking. So, guys, get ready to see history from a whole different point of view. And now we'll move to the Gayatri Spivak. So, alright, let's keep this journey rolling and dive into this fascinating world of Gayatri Spivak. So as you can see, that's how she looks like. And we're gonna discuss Gayatri Spivak's Can the Subaltern Speak, which was published in 1988. And at the end, we're gonna discuss a critique of post-colonial reason, 1999. So let's talk about Gayatri Spivak a little bit. So so far we have learned that she's not just any scholar, right? She's an Indian American scholar, a literary theorist, and a feminist critic. Spivak isn't just sitting around twiddling her thumbs. She is a university professor at Columbia University. And not only that, she went ahead and founded the institute called Comparative Literature and Society. That's like creating a space where people can come together to explore different perspective and ideas, right? So that is all about our Gayatri Spivak, and also a couple of more things that I'm gonna mention here. Uh, Gayatri Spivak, as we know, is known for a lot of things, right? But her essay that Can the Subaltern Speak is like her masterpiece. Is the kind of essay that makes you stop, think. She's all about considering history, geography, and class when it comes to understanding women's experiences. And she's not just saying it for a fun, she's really exploring those missing voices and perspective. Now, one of the coolest thing she did was dive into the concept of subaltern, right? Those marginalized and often silenced voices. She questioned if they could even speak up, considering the oppressive system they were in. She went all detective mode on the Eurocentric viewpoint, pointing out how it often avoids acknowledging its role in silencing the subaltern. And did you know that Spivak's effort didn't just stop at writing essays? He translated and introduced Jacques Derrida's of grammatology. And that's not all. She also translated several works by Mahasweta Devi, including imaginary maps and breast stories. And let's not forget about the award she, received in 2012. She received the Kyoto Prize for Arts and Philosophy because she's been as a critical theorist and educator who fights against intellectual colonialism. She's all about bringing different perspective to the table and challenging the status. And the cherry on top, she was awarded the Padma Bhushan Award in 2013. There's more. She wrote a critique of post-colonial reason in 1999. She's all about questioning the norms and pushing boundaries, as we know. So, can the subaltern speak? In this, already we have discussed what is there. I'll just point out some important things. Like in Can the Subaltern Speak, you find geography, class, and feminism, examines sati practice and focuses on absent depiction. She talks about subaltern silence that we have already talked, questions if subaltern can have a voice. She talks about Eurocentric subject and this war representation issues. Subaltern as other, she introduced an European intellectual creation that they created that other thing for subaltern people, and accessing the subjectivity, effort to understand, investigate it. And feminizing deconstruction adds gender to philosophy. And as we know, she has taken this term, subaltern term, Gramsci's concepts. Subaltern as marginalized. She's also the co-founder of the post-colonial theory, contribution acknowledged. Right, now let's see another work that often these days you are getting in your exam, which is a critique of post-colonial reason. And this thought-provoking works, a critique of post-colonial reason, which was published, as we know, 1999, because this book takes us on a journey through European metaphysics, colonial structures, and even introduces us to a powerful concept called strategic essentialism, So remember this term, which is quite important. Once I've seen that they have asked about this particular term, so you should, of course, keep in mind. So first off, Spivak starts by examining the heavyweights of European philosophy, like Kant and Hegel, and she shines a light on how their discussions tend to exclude the subaltern, and she questions why the subaltern are not included. So, those marginalized voices that often go unheard. It's like they are in their own bubble, preventing non Europeans from taking their rightful place as complete human beings in the discourse. Hold on, because Spivak doesn't stop there. She introduced a groundbreaking ideas known as sanction ignorance. Again, this term is quite important that you should remember. So this term shines a spotlight on the deliberate silencing that happens within colonial structure. Imagine someone dismissing a context as irrelevant just to maintain the status quo. That's the heart of sanction ignorance. It's like a purposeful blind spot created to keep certain narrative out of the spotlight. Now let's talk about strategic essentialism. And as we know, this is coined by Spivak, right? And it's a real game changer. Picture this: there are different groups with varied agendas, especially among women's group. But collaborating can be a bit tricky when everyone's priorities are different. That's where strategic essentialism comes in. It's a temporary alliance for a common social cause. It's like saying, hey, let's set aside our differences and focus on what unite us. So that is our strategic essentialism. So this concept allows diverse groups to come together under a simplified essentialist banner, all for the sake of achieving a common goal, that is unity. And that's the thing about Spivak's work. She's all about challenging the norms and introducing fresh ways of thinking. She's showing us that sometime we need to shake things up, create alliance, and re-evaluate the knowledge that's been presented to us. Through a critique of post-colonial reason, Spivak is reminding us that there is always more beneath the surface waiting to be explored. Let's shift our focus to another key figure in the Subaltern Studies movement, Ranajit Guha, an Indian historian whose ideas and contribution have left an incredible mark on our understanding of history and society. First thing first, Guha was more than just an Indian historian. He was a trailblazer. His influence within the Subaltern Studies group was immense, and he played a crucial role on the editor of many of the group's early anthology. His journey wasn't just confined to India. He ventured to the UK in 1959 and made his mark as a reader in history at the University of Sussex. Insurgency in colonial India is nothing short of a classic in the field. This work isn't just about historical events, it's about giving a voice to those often left in the shadows, the peasant who were at the heart of India's colonial struggle. Guha also set the agenda for subaltern studies in the very first volume of the journal. He defined a term that would become central to their discussions, the subaltern. In his eyes, the subaltern were those who didn't fall into the category of the elite, the everybody people who often don't get a chance to tell their stories. And speaking of stories, Guha's work tackled some major historiographical issues heads on, and he criticized the colonial appropriation of India's past, where the narrative was often skewed to serve British interest. He highlighted the collaboration of colonialist knowledge in the act of conquest, showing how various branches of knowledge were weaponized. Guha's perspective on British rule in India was profound. He called it a dominance without hegemony. This concept highlights the power dynamics of colonial rule, where authority was exercised without the complete cultural dominance that typically comes with it. But Guha's mission went beyond critiquing colonial narrative. He aimed to rewrite history from the perspective of the Indian people themselves. He believed that the people of India should be the subject of their own history rather than mere spectator or object of the colonial gaze. And so Guha's work delved into the lives of subaltern, their autonomy, their consciousness, their culture. He challenged mainstream historiographies, focused on political elite, and introduced the world to the rich tapestry of everyday existence. He believed that the story of common people deserved to stand alongside the grand narrative or world history, offering us more nuance and authentic understanding of the past. In a world where dominant narratives often overshadows the voices of marginalized, Ranjit Guha's work stands as a testament of the power of questioning, challenging, and reshaping historical perspective. His legacy is one of the empowerment and reclamation, reminding us that history is never just about rulers and conquerors, but about the lives and experience of all people. Moving forward, let's dive deeper into the pivotal year of 1982 when Ranjit Guha made a significant contribution to the world of scholarship. It was in this year that he launched a groundbreaking initiative known as Subaltern Studies, an edited series that would come to reshape our understanding of history and society. Central to Guha's perspective was the concept of the subaltern. He defined this term in a way that captured the essence of those who were often sidelined in history narratives. According to Guha, the subaltern encompasses individuals in India who didn't belong to privileged elite. This included a diverse range of people: peasants toiling in fields, workers laboring in factories, impoverished landlord struggling to make ends meet, and those who navigate their way between defiances and respects of the elite. This term, subaltern, finds its root in the work of Antonio Gramsci, as we know, who is an Italian Marxist whose ideas resonate deeply with Guha. The intersection between their theories is notable. Both recognize the significance of those on the margins, those who had been historically marginalized, and sought to bring their experiences to the forefront. But Guha's inspirations extended beyond Gramsci. He was influenced by philosophical giants like Hegel and Heidegger, as well as the rich tapestry of Bengali literature. A standout influence was the revered poet and thinker Rabindranath Tagore, whose works provide Guha with valuable insight into the complexity of Indian society and culture. So, this concept, subaltern as employed by Guha in various forms, delved into more than historical narrative. It opens up discussion about caste, class, and gender, shedding light on the intricate intersection of power and identity. This is a reminder that history isn't just a linear account of events, it's a tapestry woven with threads and various experiences and struggles. So, the impact of Guha's work reaches far beyond academia. Subaltern studies has had a transformative effect on how we approach history in fields spanning Asian, African, and Latin American contexts. By reimagining history from the perspective of the subaltern, it has revitalized discussions and popular consciousness and mobilization, giving voice to those whose stories were often overlooked. In essence, Ranjit Guha's pioneering effort in launching subaltern studies and his nuanced deployment of the subaltern have reshaped the landscape of historical scholarship. They have challenged us to recognize that history isn't confined to the powerful few, but is a dynamic narrative shaped by the struggle, agency, and resilience of all individuals, regardless of their place in society. Right? Dipesh Chakrabarty, born in vibrant city of Kolkata in 1948, Chakrabarty is an Indian historian whose contribution have left an incredible mark on our understanding of history and society. Chakravarty's journey is closely intertwined with the trajectory of subaltern studies. He recognized the urgent need to produce historical analysis that spotlighted the experience and narrative of subaltern groups, those often overlooked by conventional historical accounts. This commitment to unveiling the stories of marginalized communities resonate deeply with the ethos of subaltern studies. One of Chakravarty's significant contribution was in his declaration about the aim of subaltern studies. He stated that the declared goal of the initiative was to produce historical analysis that elevates subaltern groups to the status of subject of histories. This declaration encapsulated the ethos that has animated subaltern studies since its inception, to create a space where the voices and experience of the marginalized take center stage. As we know, he has written a lot of important work like Rethinking Working Class History, Social Dimension of Early Buddhism, Beginning of Iron and Social Changes in India, Indian Studies, Past and Present. Another work which is quite important and you get every time in your exam, right? Provincializing Europe, Post-Colonial Thought and Historical Differences. And whatever we have discussed so far on Dipesh Chakrabarty, it is from all this Provincializing Europe, Post-Colonial Thought and Historical Differences, which was published in 2000. Remember that the name of the work. And he also published a couple of more books like Habitation of Modernities, The Calling of History, The Crisis of Civilization, and The Climate of History in Planetary Age. So remember that that is a recent work which was published in 2021. So remember all this. So in summary, Dipesh Chakrabarty's journey as an Indian historian has been a remarkable exploration of marginalized narrative and voices. His contribution to subaltern studies, post-colonial theory, and historical scholarship have enriched our understanding of history's complexities through his books and research. Chakrabarty has invited us to rethink established paradigm, challenges Eurocentric perspective, and recognize the agency and significance of subaltern group in shaping our shared history. So guys, that's all for today. Let me conclude our lecture, and we have conclusion also that you can see over here all these points and all this PPT you can get from the app. So don't wait, just go to Play Store and download the app Nerd School, and everything will be there. You can subscribe and access to our massive library, over 2 lakh MCQs that you can do, but we have also the separate part where important tests are there that you should attend, and promise you once you do that it will be easy for you to crack the exam. But anyway, let's conclude this lecture. So as we know, it was completely captivating journey through the world of subaltern studies so far, and of course guided by the remarkable contribution of Gayatri Spivak, Ranajit Guha and Dipesh Chakrabarty. We have delved into the life and work of Gayatri Spivak, who is like a true titan in the realm of scholarship feminism. And of course, her presence at Columbian University as a university professor has been nothing short of influential, right? Subaltern studies, which is like the heart of our discussion, has been a pioneering force in the landscape of post-colonial and subaltern discourses. Through its bold agenda, it has sought to reshape historical narrative, challenging paradigm, and highlighting the voices of those marginalized by society. In our lecture, we also encountered Ranajit Guha, who's an esteemed Indian historian who charted the course of subaltern studies. By defining the subaltern, Guha reclaimed that history from colonial distortion, inviting us to peer into the everyday life, action, and of course the consciousness of those often relegated to the periphery. In our lecture, we also talked about Dipesh Chakrabarty and his, of course, contribution to the enrichment of post-colonial thought and the reinterpretation of history. So guys, that's all for today. Let's remember that subaltern studies has not only enriched the fields of Asian, African and Latin American history, but has also left an incredible mark on global intellectual thoughts. Right? So that's all for today, and tomorrow we're going to talk about Dalit literature. So be there, and of course subscribe the channel